There we go. All right, so today we are very excited to have a group from the Minnetonka Coalition for Equitable Education joining us. We have a panel of 5 folks, 2 current students, 1 alum, and 2 adult allies who will be introducing themselves in a moment. But before we get to them personally, we're going to share a video so we can get some broad context before diving into each of their voices and stories. A reminder, we are recording this session with the permission of our MCEE folks. Thank you. If you personally, as a St. Luker, don't want to be recorded, you can turn your video off, and then you won't be on the recording. The recording will just be posted to our website and YouTube page. We confirmed our MCEE panel midweek, so in case you got the news late, you're in for a pleasant surprise. In our normal first Sunday of the month, Dismantling Racism Within session, that will take place at a future week. So we will get back to that curriculum as well. So we're gonna go ahead and get things started here. I'm gonna do a screen share and show an overview video that highlights the formation of the MCEE movement earlier this past year. And then we will meet our wonderful panel participants. So let me share our screen here.
In new ways. Our goal through this project is to inform and inspire. Randy Powell continues her in-depth reporting with a focus tonight on youth activists in education.
Lindsay, a group of girls recently spearheaded a rally for change in education. The teens are students of color who describe their experiences and challenges going to a mostly white school. Now they're hoping district leaders will take on their recommendations for solutions.
And to you, the supporters of the MCE, I can assure you that we will not be silenced. This is our rally we're fighting for equitable education at our school.
They're amplifying their voices, sharing their experiences. These West Metro High School students organized this rally mid-July. The teens say they are proud to be BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and they want change.
I remember that a kid turned around to me and said, "I'm glad that you're one of the good terrorists." I can't even express how hurtful that was to me. I remember one day on the way to school, this older 8th grader had pointed at me and yelled, "Go back to the rice fields." No child should have to defend themselves against a remark that should never have been said in the first place.
We met up with the girls to learn more in this historic moment about the conversations some students of color are having right now who go to predominantly white schools.
My name is Jin Hyung Pang. I'm 15, I'm Korean, and I will be a junior next year.
I'm Alana Dwali. I'm 16 years old. I'm Black, and I'm going to be an incoming senior next year.
My name is Lena Pak. I'm 16 years old. I'm half Korean and half white, and I'll be an incoming senior next year.
More than 81% of their classmates are white, and according to data from the Minnesota Department of Education, more than half of the students are white in 21 of the 30 largest school districts in the state.
You kind of feel the need to assimilate. When I go to high school and we have no representation of Black authors when we're reading books, it definitely is hurtful, and to a degree it makes me not excited to want to go to school.
As a student of color, what is that experience that you have? What is that perspective that you live?
All your friends are white, or all the people around you in your class are white, and there's a sense of just wanting to fit in, even though that may be at the sake of like agreeing to and like laughing at like microaggressions.
What is it right now that you would say is most challenging as it relates to your education?
I think what's most challenging for us is when we are asking for change. I think for most students of color, being in a majority white school, you often find that your perspectives are not being represented in the curriculum.
What would you say that you experience that people don't know about that they should as we all work together to move forward?
It's just now I'm more confident in myself, because just talking about my experience is something that I never really got to do throughout high school, throughout elementary school, and there's just so many things that these microaggressions and this racist behavior does to people, like regarding their self-image.
I think that a lot of our new white allies or new supporters that are joining the conversation are not educated yet, but they want to be.
I just think that the important thing is to listen to them and trust them in their experiences. I've never seen what they talk about, but that's because I don't know what to look for, and it's not, of course, directed at me, so it's a lot easier for me to ignore.
18-year-old Dominic Bradburn is about to begin his senior year of high school.
What has been most unexpected in this moment in history for you? In which ways has this been profound for you as a white student?
And I think I'm definitely surprised with the amount that of different instances of things that students of color have talked about. I've been definitely ignorant to things that I shouldn't have been, and quieter about things than I shouldn't have been before. But
were there ever times when you heard something or saw something but were afraid to speak up?
Almost definitely. You just think that, no, maybe it was a joke, or if it was someone else will say something, but someone else always doesn't.
To make the school experience better, they say, for all students, Alam, Lena, and Chin Hyung say they want improvement with things like implementation of a curriculum that includes the histories and cultures of more diverse groups.
Is this surprising?
It's not. I actually think high school students have been asking for this for a long time.
Dr. Kathleen Holmes Campbell, the dean of the University of St. Thomas School of Education, says the high school students' imperatives align with research.
Fill in the gaps, because a textbook is giving you an overview, but who's left out of the textbook?
Because there are people who would say things are fine, as they are right now, that there is a rigorous curriculum. What would you say?
I think that while there is a rigorous curriculum, what I would question is it really exposing you to the world?
What does the research show in terms of if that is effective and if in fact that is a problem?
Great question. And the literature suggests that multicultural materials in the classroom are very important.
Known for her work on racial stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination, Dr. Rebecca Bigler, University of Texas at Austin, professor of psychology.
That alone will not be enough to create a positive cultural climate. To promote positive racial attitudes, it is vital that educators talk both about race, what it means and what it doesn't mean, and about racism in the classroom.
The students' list of imperatives also includes an incident reporting system, a dress code prohibiting hate symbols, recruitment of BIPOC teachers, and diversity training for staff.
The lack of change in curriculum, the lack of representation within teachers, and lack of representation within the books that we read definitely allows a culture where microaggressions and being racist is acceptable.
Katie Becker, Minnetonka School Board Chair.
What are some of your thoughts, visions on potential changes? Are there any potential challenges that you see?
I would say the most surprising thing that I have heard is the student experiences and how they have had feelings and experiences of pain and isolation. It's heartbreaking, and it's hard to hear that we've let them down in some ways. We know we can do better, and we will.
Superintendent of Minnetonka Public Schools, Dr. Dennis Peterson.
Is there anything that you feel like that you're up against as you try to figure out and navigate how to move forward?
Sure. Well, probably the biggest thing we're up against is just time. We want to hear as many voices as possible. We're not planning to make it a totally different district, but we do believe that we're hearing some things that need to be fixed.
And as Lena, Chin Hyung, and Alam work to move the conversation forward, they're not just expressing hurt, but hope.
Diversity training will give staff specific tools and knowledge that will make them better prepared to identify and address racial microaggressions, lead respectful discussions surrounding race, and to create an inclusive and supportive environment for all of our students.
The girls say they believe their recommendations for changes will benefit all students, those like them who are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, as well as white students. Lindsay?
Brandy, thank you for bringing us so many voices. It was eye-opening, a great account from these teens. And you told us that they created their list of imperatives after the death of George Floyd.
Yeah, that's what they told me. They described it really as a turning point. The girls say in this historic moment they were motivated to make an even bigger push for change because they say they never really felt heard before. Alam, Lena, and Shinyan say they're hoping for systemic change to what they describe as a systemic problem. And the superintendent and school board chair say they'll likely announce any changes they'll be making next month. Lindsay?
Randy Powell with an in-depth look.
Hey, thank you, everyone. My apologies for the skippy video. Hopefully the audio came through well. And with that, I want to turn things over and ask our participants here to introduce themselves, share your name, pronouns, and if you wouldn't mind, what brought you into this work? And let's start with our students and alums. We'll start with Lena, Solveig, and Brianna.
Okay, I can go first. I'm Lena, she, her pronouns. I'm a senior at Minnetonka High School this year. I think what brought me into this work was being like half Asian. I never was like super aware of racism because I was white passing, but also being Asian, I thought that I wouldn't have to worry about being racist myself. But then when I joined the debate team in high school, learning about a lot of like world issues and learning about a lot of social justice issues through debate really opened my eyes to how I can be both like victims of racism that I hadn't noticed before and also perpetuating certain systems as well. So that's what made me really interested in it. And then after the murder of George Floyd, some adults reached out to me because I was interested in the topic to start working on this. And that's what really got me started in this organization.
Thanks, Lena. Solveig?
I'm Solveig. A lot of you probably know me. I use she, her pronouns. And I think, like Lena, I'm white and Chinese. Well, yeah, I'm white and Chinese and I'm white passing. So a lot of the time I've gotten to understand my own racial identity on my own terms rather than having to face it through microaggressions or discrimination. And so that's been something that I've learned about and worked with within my own family. And then also through my education in the IB program, I've gotten to read a lot more diverse perspectives through texts and everything. And then recently got to write an essay about racial inequality in the healthcare programs in the US. And so I think a lot of that has made me realize that I want to be able to for everyone in my high school to be able to have these educational experiences to learn what they want to learn and to be supported in any endeavors and find these perspectives in curriculum that we read. And so seeing Lena's work, I reached out to her and wanted to learn more and be supportive in any way I could. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Solveig. And Brianna?
Hi, you can call me Bree. So I'm Bree and I'm an alum, she, her pronouns. I kind of got into it, so I graduated from Minnetonka, and then during college, this was kind of like the work I was doing a little bit. I don't know if you guys ever know of TRIO. It's a federal program that supports low-income first-generation students with documented disability. So I was very involved with that community. And so then after I graduated, 2 alums actually reached out to me, and we decided to kind of start this and help fix the problems that I experienced. So I'm also half white, half Black, but I mean, if you look at me, you're gonna definitely decide that I'm Black. And so I did face those microaggressions and feeling isolated and feeling alone. So if I can help students not feel that, then good, my job here is done. So that's why.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bree. And real quick, before we move on to our adult allies too, I'm wondering if one of the 3 of you each kind of alluded to this concept of white passing. I'm wondering if one of you can just describe what that is or what it might look like in your life.
Yeah, so I think, especially in the context of Minnesota being a predominantly white state, when white people see me, they typically will see my white features more, and so they will assume that I'm white rather than Chinese, which I'm both. And so a lot of that is white passing within the white gaze for me. But when I meet like Asian folks or maybe other people of color, they might see more so that I might also be part Asian. So I think typically like white passing means um, I won't necessarily see that same sense of like curiosity or microaggressions from white folks in my community or sphere.
Thank you, Sylvie. Sally and Amber, if you could introduce yourselves as well and how you got into this work, and maybe just a brief word about what it is that you all are doing as adult allies here.
Certainly. So good morning, Sally Brown. My home parish is Trinity Episcopal Church in Excelsior. So I grew up in the area, actually graduated from Hopkins. So between Excelsior and Hopkins is where I've spent most of my life. I have 6 children and have had children in the Minnetonka School District for 23 years running. We're in the 24th year here. And of the 6, 2 of my daughters are from Sierra Leone, West Africa. They came with their father as refugees to the United States. And then my husband and I have an 11-year-old who's a 6th grader at MMW who is mixed race. And I came to MC. So Lena mentioned that there were some adults who reached out to try to pull people together. It actually started by an alumni who said, hey, you know, people like Bree and others had been wanting to do this kind of work. And after the murder of George Floyd, they really wanted to coalesce and make something happen. I am a member of the Minnetonka West Interfaith Community Engagement Group, which is churches and social service agencies like ICA Food Shelf, We Can, His House, etc. And I had shared some of the concerns that my own children had faced in Minnetonka schools, and that's how I was kind of identified as somebody who might want to join MCE. And it is an honor to be among these young people and to learn from them. Incredible. So that's one of the reasons why I stay, because they're awesome. One of the ways that I participate as an adult ally is to, and I'll have to let Sylvia and Lena and Bree tell whether this is true or not, but I think that, you know, Amber knows school board operations. She gets how they work, right? And I know faith communities, and I know some other things going on in the community. So we help the youth navigate some of these structures to see where the best ins and just try to bring people into the conversation. I think that's probably the biggest way that I help participate.
Thanks, Sally. Amber?
I'm Amber Bullington. I use she, her pronouns. I am both an adult ally and an alum. I'm a 1984 graduate of Minnetonka High. I have 2 children, a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old, and they both graduated from Minnetonka as well. I kind of came to this work through the school board, as Sally mentioned. My husband and I have been school board watchdogs for a while. I initially got into working with the school board on mental health issues, which I'm very passionate about. And I worked with a group of parents on that for quite some time. And through that work, kind of got linked into this group. And I stayed because I have so much to learn. I always knew I had a lot to learn. And I also have noticed a huge gap in my education from Minnetonka and had hoped that had changed for my children, and it really hasn't. My children are now going to college up in Canada, and so they're learning about Indigenous people, not something they really ever discussed at Minnetonka. How I support MC is I'm a communications professional. So I work on social media and other things. And also I go to the school board meetings every time and kind of keep an eye on them. And the students I've met through this organization have been phenomenal, and I've learned so much, and that's kind of what keeps me coming back every day.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amber. And we're going to focus mostly on the student voices for this panel, but I do want to recognize Sally and Amber taking the important step of not only feeling inspired by the younger folks, but also doing what they can from adults and their places of power and influence to actively engage and support them. So I thank you both in that. Into the work, I'm going to make sure to offer a chance for questions. St. Luke loves asking questions, but a couple broader questions first to our panel. First, and my apologies, this isn't one of the questions I foreshadowed when we met earlier, but having watched the video again, I'm wondering if you could just describe for us, this past year, that was, I know a lot of the effort coming together for your imperatives came after the murder of George Floyd. And we've been through a long year together, continuing unfolding of the pandemic, a lot of political things going on, obviously. I'm wondering, as you look back at this past year, how have you been received? Do you feel supported? Do you feel like, gosh, there was initial interest, but now it's fleeting? What has your reception been like?
I can speak a little bit on that. I definitely think that there was more interest in the beginning, especially over the summer when we still felt comfortable like having protests in person, and it was warm enough to like be outside. I think a lot more people were engaged then. I think people are still interested, but not as like loudly interested. They're not as outgoing anymore. And our reception from the school board has definitely like they're wanting to work with us, but they're being very slow about it. And I think so we talked about this a little bit earlier, but like the school board has told us several times that we are outnumbered by people who don't want like equitable education, which we don't believe to be true, but that's the school board's understanding of the Minnetonka community. So a lot of the work that we're doing now compared to like protests and meeting with school board members earlier, now we're starting to do this outreach in the community and do educational events and stuff to try and widen our community base and show the school board that we are not outnumbered and that we are actually the majority, that the majority wants equitable education. So these kinds of meetings, different events that we've been holding is kind of what we're moving towards. And then hopefully in the spring and summer again, we'll move back towards more of that protesting action work as we show the school board that we have a larger base than they think we do.
Solveig, Bree, anything you want to add to that? We'll put a quick pin on that quote there, that they are outnumbered in terms of whether or not Minnetonka wants equity in education. We're going to come back to St. Luke as we consider our own voices and influence. But as you've gotten into this work in the past year, I'm wondering, in addition to that sort of school board pushback of, and I heard the superintendent kind of his own words were, we need more time, which that may be true that you want to engage voices. I also know that that's often a delay tactic to halt progress in equity and justice. So I'm wondering, as you've gone about this work, what are some of the barriers that you have encountered along the way? Maybe besides the pandemic, what are some other barriers that you've encountered?
Well, one thing that's been interesting, and maybe the adults can speak on this too, but I know on Facebook there's like a specific anti-equity Facebook group that formed in response to our group.
Really?
So that was definitely surprising. I really don't understand how people can label themselves as anti-equity and feel like that's okay or a good thing, but that group does exist. I think
Yeah, definitely the time aspect has been a big barrier. Just that the school board members and a lot of people in the community, I think just aren't like ready for this change, or they haven't been thinking about it long enough, even though we are in need of this change very quickly. So yeah, there's definitely been a lot of like resistance to moving fast within the school board and in a lot of the goals that they formed that they said they were going to be like doing within the first semester, they've not gotten around to yet. So yeah, like holding the school board accountable to doing what they say they are going to do has definitely been a challenge, as well as other community members that have been, pushing back against us and not wanting equity.
Solveig, Bree, or adults, barriers that you're finding?
I'll just echo, this is Sally, I'll just echo what Lena said about the anti-equity group. We have a notion of who some of those folks are because they've made themselves very visible, but it is our understanding from talking to some of the school board members that there is a small but very vocal and perceived to be powerful group of people who are opposing efforts towards equity. And the argument that is most often made is that it cultivates a victim mentality. So somehow they have a notion in mind that we're telling students, or that equity means telling students that you are a victim and poor you, and so we're all going to rally around and protect you in a way that brings people down rather than lifting people up. So it's a misperception. It needs education, to say the least. And among the folks who are against this are a few prominent Black parents, and that should not surprise us. My own husband, coming from West Africa, has a strong sense that you just swallow it and just do what you have to do. He's uncomfortable with this notion himself. I understand it differently. And I believe our children understand it differently as well. And so I'm not willing to give in to that perspective.
I think another argument that we hear from the anti-equity folks is that we've made school political, and we would
Sorry.
what we say is human rights is not a political issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they say, we're bringing the liberal agenda into the schools. It's un-American. Some of the things that I've heard said in public with pride, it has been shocking to me. Even me growing up with a racist father, I'm not sure he'd ever stand up in front of a school board and say the things that these people have said. And that's been heartbreaking to me, because they'll do it right after 5 BIPOC have shared their horrific experiences, and they don't even hear it. And then they just go and spout I think it's garbage. And to me, that's a huge barrier in this community, is that people just don't see it.
I think another part of the political agenda thing that people are very against and like anti-equity in that way is that it's seen as like presenting more perspectives or more diverse curriculum is like not unifying, when in reality it's the curriculum we have now isn't unifying for everyone. It's unifying for these few people that are going to go on and feel like they're part of America and feel like their perspectives are represented, when in reality, if we have a whole bunch of diverse perspectives, we're going to see leaders and people in many different positions in the future also push these perspectives forward and unite people through their different perspectives, because that's the reality. So I think just wanting to push forward the actual reality of America within our schools rather than just the clean, whitewashed version that we see now.
As we continue on here, I want to just add a second question in the mix for the panel. If there are other barriers, by all means, but have there been things that have surprised you along the way? Good, bad, ugly, in between, as you've stepped forward into this work, what has been surprising?
One thing that's been pleasantly surprising for me, and especially in talking with different churches, is the number of like seniors and older adults who have been engaged in this work. And for whatever reason in Minnetonka, like all the parents are not overly engaged, but there are a lot of seniors that have been doing this kind of work. And that's really, I had no idea that that was happening. So that's been very pleasantly surprising. And then I guess more negatively, there's a lot of things that, yeah, people have said, or yeah, that I've heard people say that have just been surprising that they would have the guts to be able to say that in like the modern US, that are just kind of ridiculous and hurtful, but it's almost so ridiculous that you laugh at it because it's that's surprising too, how the number of people that also on the flip side are still quite outwardly racist and are just not listening.
I'll go here. I'm very surprised with the amount of churches that are getting along with this. I've had kind of this moment where like religion and like this work, I've seen a lot of like contradiction between it, and to see it here and other places being accepted makes me, it's a both identities, like accepting my religion that I can have both, that I don't need to choose between one. So thank you guys all for being here. But then more negatives, I also have been surprised of how not surprised I am with people wanting to accept it within the community. I feel like I should be more surprised in it, but it's kind of what I was expecting. And that kind of hurts as well, to be expecting this. And to hear people not willing to accept it as well has been very, I thought with like conversations, it'd be easier to get people to see, and that's just not the case at all. And then like the reasons behind why they don't want to support it is exactly how at least I'm feeling, and I would imagine other BIPOC students are feeling, for those exact same reasons. And that's why we want to fix it. So it's just hard to kind of hear that, and then having them not want it for you, but wanting it and to keep it for themselves.
Thanks, Bree. I want to open it up to the wider St. Luke circle. And just a check on time, we'll go till about 10:20. And I want to save the last 5 or so minutes to ask 2 questions of you all, which is, how can we get engaged and support? So the sort of direct call to action. And the second is where you're seeing hope as you go about this work. So I want to end on that sort of uplifting and actionable point. But I also want to give some chance for our St. Lukers to ask questions. So if you've got a question that you'd like to ask the panel, I invite you to unmute yourself and do so. And then maybe mute yourself afterwards, just so we can focus on their replies. Judy Nelson, I see you unmuting, and Carol, will have you next.
Yes, I would like to know what the diversity is in the faculty, and whether there has been any support of the faculty for this group.
Yeah, that's a good question. Our faculty is also very majority white. I've never had a teacher of color, except maybe like once for a substitute that came in. And that's not something I realized until recently, but I think it does have a really big impact. And there's a lot of research about this too, about when students don't have teachers that look like them or who can relate like them, their schoolwork is, decreases, that they're being comfortable in school, they're not as comfortable. So yeah, there's a lot of harm in not having teachers of color. I think that there are a lot of teachers that I've met with that support us and want to have a diverse curriculum and want to provide equitable education, but they're just not getting the support from higher up administration to do so.
So there is like an equity team of teachers at our school, which are banding together to like support each other in educating themselves and each other on these kind of issues. So we've worked with them a little bit on like giving them resources or events to educate themselves, but it is really difficult because a lot of the higher up administration has said that they like can't attend MC events, or that it's like a conflict of interest for them to attend our events, and so there's some like job security issues. So I think a lot of our teachers want to be supportive and helpful. They're just facing a lot of barriers from administration to be able to openly support us, which is unfortunate too.
Yeah, we have a LGBTQ kind of offshoot from MC that we call House of Pride. And we recently held an educator forum. So some of our LGBTQ students came forward and said, we want to help educate teachers. And we got a great reception to that, but we marketed it as House of Pride, not MC. And I think that's why we got 20 teachers to show up, which is unfortunate. And that's a directive coming from up downward.
Carol, let's take your question.
I'm trying to get my arms around an anti-equity group. What is it that you're asking for that takes more time, and what are they afraid of? Sally and Amber, you gave a couple reasons, which I also don't understand. What have you asked for so far that they can't do and that they need so much time? I mean, you're asking, to change all the textbooks and buy all new textbooks, and I bet not. I don't get it.
I think a lot of it is like by promoting equity, you're trying to uplift this group that has not had a voice in education for a long time. And so a lot of the belief is that by uplifting one group of people, that other group will be pushed down, when in reality we're trying to even the playing field, and also even help white students understand a multitude of perspectives so that they can be more successful wherever they choose to go, and they can hold all of these perspectives in addition. So I think it's a lot of it is the fear of change too, and education is something that's really sensitive as well, because it's the children, it's like people are really worried about what we're putting into children's minds, and there's this whole idea of like an agenda, when in reality, like, I think education is providing the tools to learn in the future and to understand the world around you. And so I think everyone has competing ideas for what education should be and what education needs to be, and what is at threat, what is threatened here, and what's at stake if things change. So I think a lot of it is like ideological fear and theoretical fear.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Also, I think at least I've heard this from like our superintendent, Dr. Peterson, before, but I think there's also a fear from like white administration and probably also from rich white parents in the community of like losing their power, because right now they're in a position of being on top, and that's something for them to be scared of. And then also like Dr. Peterson has said, if we start bringing in like more like other people of color or other representation, then we're gonna lose all those important like classical European figures, like where like those are important to be teaching about. So it's just that kind of mentality. And I think another thing that I've noticed is probably a lot of those like white parents or the white administration, like they themselves do not have the education on diverse perspectives, and so they don't know what's out there that they could be teaching, because they simply haven't had the education themselves. And so like you can't teach or understand or know about something that you don't know about, right? And so like I think that there's also aspect of they don't really feel like it's that big of a problem because they don't realize there's this whole segment of the world that they're not teaching. So they just feel like we're complaining about something very small or unimportant. And so I think that's also probably a reason that it doesn't, to them, to the administration, to the people of power, it's not a priority issue because they just they don't notice it themselves, right? And so they're not putting it as a priority, and that's what makes it take a long time.
And
I also, oh, go ahead, Bree.
Okay, I was gonna say it also makes people feel uncomfortable. I think the topic around race and the topic about learning about other identities makes people uncomfortable, and they don't want that for their kids. There has been times where teachers have given a text and then a student feels uncomfortable, and right away a parent contacts school board and then it's removed. And so yeah, I think that's that idea surrounding they don't want the kids to feel uncomfortable. I think that's what it is at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bree. I was actually told by an educator at Minnetonka Middle School East that when they teach the Holocaust curriculum, they have to ask permission from parents for their children to be involved in that course. That what happened there, right? I surmise that the district under the current district administration has a little bit of a tentative position because we have developed into such a college prep school with such academic rigor that anything, and that has obviously attracted people to our district. In fact, we have a very high percentage of open enrolled, right? And of those people who've open enrolled, some of them have fled other districts that were doing equity work. So some of the most vocal opponents are people who don't even live near here. They're from Minneapolis or St. Louis Park or where have you. And so I really think that that's one thing they're trying to navigate is, if we make these changes, does that put our reputation as being one of the most stellar high schools in the nation at risk? To me, it's measuring the wrong thing.
Yep.
And even the annual survey that goes out to parents, and we'll be weighing in as MC on that as well, is structured in such a way as to evoke responses from the right people that you want to evoke responses from that will put the district in a very good light. It's not offered multilingual, it's not promoted to people who may not have great access to internet, etc. We'll be doing some work around that as well, but it's skewed.
Yeah. And if they are able to claim in some form or fashion that they're hearing more from the anti-equity folk than they are for the pro-equity folk, then they're not going to feel any of that pressure. So we'll remind that as we consider actions towards the end here. Another question from St. Luke. Katie?
I want to pursue what Solveig talked about. I wonder if you hear from anyone else other than those already involved, how Minnetonka is miseducating all their white students and not preparing them for the real world. I saw that with my own kids who went to Minnetonka schools. And it seems to me that more white families would wake up and be concerned about this, since they do obviously value education so highly.
Yeah, I've had multiple people talk to me about curriculum, especially English curriculum and history curriculum, where my English teacher said that when she began at Minnetonka, she looked at all of the different English courses and saw a route where students could only read one woman. All the authors they would read would be white. They would only read one woman, and that would be in To Kill a Mockingbird. And she was really surprised by that. And it's changed a bit, especially with the IB curriculum, where teachers can choose the books that we read. But in a lot of cases, like my friends took AP literature, and they read entirely European literature. And teachers asked for recommendations, but when given recommendations for BIPOC authors, they weren't receptive because they said it wouldn't be on the AP test, even though on the AP test, the students didn't find anything related to any of the European literature that they had read. And then just stuff like that, where it's like this understanding of preparation for a test, or for something, I don't know, some idea where it's like you need to uphold this high standard of literature, where in reality, all literature needs to be analyzed and needs to be understood and widen people's perspectives. And so I think especially in English, that's a lot of what I've seen. I don't know if Lena or Bree has heard things from other students or teachers.
Yeah. Well, two things that I was thinking. First is like, I think a lot of students who have the opportunity to take IB classes or AP classes, which are like higher level, more rigorous classes, they sometimes have more of an opportunity to learn from diverse perspectives. And like we do have one class called American Studies, which is an honors course that I took and I like really liked because I thought it showed a lot of diverse perspective. Like obviously it wasn't perfect, right? But I think it was better. And I think where a lot of the issue comes in is like in regular classes that the like majority of students are taking, but in those regular classes, they aren't taking the time to like put as much work into the curriculum. And I think probably in those regular classes, there's a lot less diversity being taught as well. And so I think like there's also a separation between people who can take IB and AP classes and then those who can't, and a difference in the education that those two groups of students are getting. And then the other thing is kind of going back to what Solveig said earlier, is that diverse education will help white students as much as it would help BIPOC students, because like BIPOC students already know about racism, right? Like it's something that they face every day. It's not something that they need to learn about or be taught, but it's the white students who are unaware about this whole way that the world works, right? Because they're on top. And so when then our white students go out into the world and have to interact with much more diverse people, because our school is very white, right? But in college, it's not always like that. And then they meet all these different types of people. They become very uncomfortable in those situations because they don't know how to interact with other types of people, and then they feel very uncomfortable, right? And so like our school is not preparing our students as best as they can for the real world. Like they might be preparing them for tests, but not to function in the real world. And so our school is really lacking in that area. And so teaching students how to like listen to other perspectives and how to be open-minded, and to be really critical and critical thinkers, like those skills are really going to be helpful in preparing our students learn how to function in the actual world, which is diverse and complex and difficult to engage in, but those are the skills that are actually going to help them be successful.
I'm gonna do big piggyback off of Lena. Yeah, the only time I read anything, I picked it myself, and it was like over the summer reading, where you had a list to choose from, and I would always find like the BIPOC authors, normally Black women authors, and I would read those, and that's the only time I would get that kind of representation. And then going back to the question, I know alumni have tried to approach it more in the "this will help you, everyone in the future" type of line, because we've experienced that. Like we'll graduate from Minnetonka, go to college, and then realize we missed out on a whole opportunity of knowledge that we could have learned. And so we've tried to kind of make it that idea, but I think we could do more of imaging it from it's going to actually help everyone, not focusing more on the BIPOC image and see. So that's definitely a good point for us to do, but it has been mentioned in different sort of ways. But yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I want to make sure that we do get the chance to get to how we can get engaged and where you all are seeing hope in this work. We'll end on that hopeful note. But in the meantime, so we here at St. Luke, I shared at the beginning, we're a predominantly white congregation that I would believe is deeply interested in equity and justice work. And I know that I have I live in Minneapolis, not Minnetonka, but I know that I have not been calling the school board directly. So I'm wondering, how can we support? What can we do? Whether that's, here and now, or how can we come in deeper solidarity with the MCE movement, so that as we move into the school board elections and the longer term work that you're doing, so that we can be faithful partners in that work.
Brennan?
Yeah.
Peter?
Oh,
yeah.
Peter?
Peter, yeah, Peter. Brianna and Solveig and Lena, listening to you, I'm hearing me in colleges in the late 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and talking to college presidents and colleagues and students, teaching Black history since 1969 as a white person. And I'm hearing Warren Rosenberg teaching multicultural voices of women and Blacks and Hispanics in his multicultural literature courses. I'm hearing, and I'd be happy to talk to your school board director, or whatever he's called. Mark Twain, by the way, said in the beginning, God created idiots. That was just for practice. Then he created school boards. I'd be happy to tell him that he is miseducating, and the board is miseducating you students for the colleges you're going into, and the junior colleges they're going into. Totally miseducating the entire student body. And I would be happy to join a group and join you and talk to your school board and principals and educate them. They are miseducating all of the students at Wayzata.
Yeah. So I think, Peter, you are probably
you're saying all the right things.
Yeah. And we thank you for that, MCEE. I think Peter represents a lot of us here at St. Luke, and what would be helpful? How, just contacting them directly. We'd love to follow your leadership, but also own our own agency. What is helpful here?
I think one thing that will be helpful in the next few months, we're hoping to do some more student recruitment and then get back on the action side of things and start holding the school board accountable, since we're reaching that like 6 months into their goals timeline. And I think once we start doing that, we'll be doing a lot of like emailing campaigns or showing up at school board events and letting them know that we're watching them. And I think having all of you like jump on that train and calling them or emailing them or showing up to school board events and saying like, we're watching you and you're not doing what you said you were going to do. That will be really helpful to let them know that they can't just slide by and not get these things done. I think until then, because I think that'll be in the next few months or so. Until then, I think really like keep having these discussions and pulling in people who are maybe like, well, good intended, have good intentions and don't want to be racist, but just aren't aware of their position or don't have that education. I think that's the group of people that I'm really interested in like talking to, like that moderate middle ground, because those are the people that they're the majority in a sense, but they are also the people that probably we could kind of get to see our side, or that have the like potential to have their eyes open. And if we can open all of the moderate or middle ground's eyes, then we will have a large majority, and we need them in order to make that strong, big change.
Other thoughts from the panel in terms of, I heard there the need to follow, and Nora very helpfully put a link to the Facebook group in there, and be ready. I know that some other churches have written formal letters to the school board. Could someone speak to that? It's something I think St. Luke could certainly do here in the intermediate time.
We'll adjust that, Sally. Yeah, I think we're on a roll with that right now, by the way. Trinity Episcopal Church wrote a letter in November that because of the pandemic, it was actually broadcast and read aloud by the secretary of the school board. And it was in support of MCE, but also encouraging the school board to do the hard work that they need to do, right? And just letting them know that the faith community is not only members of this community and students and teachers, et cetera, but they're absolutely behind this work. And that was followed by Excelsior United Methodist. We understand that Minnetonka United Methodist will be doing likewise in a couple of weeks. And we can give you our tips and tricks for engaging with the school board. It's been tremendously helpful. I can see a shift in the school board, knowing that there is broad community support and from respected institutions. We're sorry that it has to be that way, but we're so grateful for the support. And I think, Bree, you alluded to it, it is really uplifting for us in this work to know that our faith partners are in it with us. This is a very authentic faith that you are demonstrating, and we are really grateful for it.
Thank you.
Brennan, I'm sorry, I got called away on a phone call that I had to take, but are we going to do a church-wide letter? I was thinking you can each do individual letters, but as a pack, again, to try to counter this, to make sure there are more equity people than non-equity. As a church, with all our names on it, like a petition.
Yeah, I wonder, students or Amber, I know you've got a lot of background in this. Is it most helpful to have a letter from the church as the institution, or from individuals, or both and?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both. I think it's powerful when the entire church sends one, especially if you can have it, you can read it or have someone read it at the school board meeting, at their study sessions, because when you want to do community comments at a regular school board meeting, it has to relate to something on the agenda. But during study sessions, you can talk about anything. So that's usually the best place to do this. But because of the pandemic, those school board meetings are now being broadcast out on YouTube. And so they have a wider audience. And I think it's powerful for people to see every month we have a different community supporting us. And I just know Dennis Peterson, our superintendent, is a religious man. And I think that's one way for us to meet him where he's at.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks. We will definitely do so. And we'll maybe follow up for a couple logistic tips. And St. Luke, that we'll see that in the coming weeks here. We'll get that figured out. I asked you all to join us till 10:15. I'm going to ask if we can just go a few minutes over so that we can hear from each of you where you are getting a sense of hope in this work. I think we named some of the very real challenges and opportunities that are ahead. But I'm wondering where you are drawing hope or inspiration, even if that is an angry hope to like dig in and keep fighting for the work. So maybe from each of you.
One thing that's been hopeful for me, I think, is, and I said this earlier too, but that there are a lot of people that are in support of us, and meeting with all these groups of people has been both surprising that that you guys exist, but also very helpful, and we really appreciate it. I'll also want to put a plug in. We have a event next Tuesday, February 9th at 7 p.m. It's called our immigration panel. So we're going to have 3 immigrant panelists answering questions about their experiences. And yeah, there's a link to that event in the chat. So if you guys are interested and available, that's going to be a really cool event that we have. And yeah, to just kind of keep opening perspectives and to learn more about different people's experiences, and the fact that a lot of people are willing to do that, that's been really helpful for me.
Lena?
Yeah, so I'm an educator. So being that sense, and also I work for Eden Prairie, and seeing them having equity so much better than Minnetonka has. It gives me hope. Somewhere close, if they're doing it, I think we can get Minnetonka on that same page. And then also me as an educator, I can't do that and not do this work. So it's kind of both, having students and kind of doing it for everyone. Yeah, and then seeing you guys also definitely gives me hope as well. So thank you.
We had real quick before the next person hops in, we had a request for how we can get the educational imperatives. I know, Sal, you sent that my way. Is it okay for me to share that in this document or even email it out later?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I posted a link in the chat. I'll make sure to include it in our St. Luke email later this week. But if you're looking for it in the meantime, any St. Lukers, just send me an email and I'll make sure that you get the wonderful list of 11 imperatives for equitable education. So Solveig, Sally, Amber, where are you seeing hope?
Yeah, I think speaking with faith communities has been really hopeful. I'm also really excited for recruitment and getting to know a lot of younger students that might want to be involved, and like setting the framework for future work and continued work. And then also just reading a lot within my own English class, and personally, like reading a lot of BIPOC authors and just different books that focus on different perspectives and aspects is just something that makes me so hopeful and excited, and wanting everyone to have that sort of experience with knowledge and reading and in school. So yeah.
Thanks, Solveig. Sally, Amber, as adult allies and supporters in this work, where are you all finding hope?
For me, my hope is in the children, my own children, and the students that I work with. I see such a passion in them, and it's a passion that I didn't have. And they give me hope that they can make these changes.
Yeah, I'll second that, and I'll also say that I get a lot of hope from the seniors. Yay, seniors. I actually took retirement this past year, which has enabled me to spend a lot of time with our district leadership, which they probably didn't anticipate. I also became a PTO mom for the first time in my life. And what has been really energizing to me is to find that widespread support across the community. And it just energizes me every time I meet somebody new who says, oh yeah, I mean, I'm meeting with these 5 people over here. We've got our own group going and whatever. And I think that's all fine. We don't all have to be MCEers or all St. Lukers, but it's wonderful to find those other pockets. And when it is time for all of us to come together, like when the upcoming election in the fall, I know it'll happen.
Yeah. And on that note, I really appreciate that you use the word coalition in the name of your group. That is what you're doing, is you are building a coalition. And St. Luke, in our longer history, I think we used to take a lot of pride in being unique and sort of the liberal justice church out here in the Minnetonka area. And we are realizing more and more and appreciating the great work that happens when coalitions come together, when we realize that we aren't in this alone, but rather we've been sort of taught to think that we're a rare voice here. So again, back to that earlier notion of they're hearing from the other side more. If we can build coalitions, we can really do something special here, and that'll in large, be thanks to the student-led efforts, Lena, Solveig, and Bree as an alum. I think each of you, and also want to just recognize that it's one thing to be inspired by your work, and then it's another to dig in and honor it by also doing our side of the equation. So we will do so in the weeks going forward. St. Luke will figure out how to organize and strategize around that. But we are running over here. Oh, and Nora again shared the link for the Facebook group there. We shared a number of links today. If you are trying to find any of them later and can't, just send me an email, text me, or call me. I'll help connect you with that information. But for now, if we could all unmute ourselves and just give a big thank you, rah, rah, clap, or whatever you'd like to share our gratitude with all of
Rah,
us.
rah.
Thank you.
Joining us.
Keep it up.
Yes, keep it up. We will be with you. We will join you. Appreciate
Also
all of you.
observing that you're all women.
Yes.
Just saying.
Where are the men? Where are the boys?
Well, one of our guys was in the video.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, where are the guys?
Good point.
Good.
You are our inspiration.
Yes.
And our
yes,
hope.
you are. That's right. And our hope. Yeah. Carry on.
And we will join
Go
you.
for it.
We
Yeah,
will
we'll
not
join
be
you.
inspired
Thank you.
from armchairs. We will work with you.
Yes.
Right. Right.
We appreciate that very much.
Wonderful. St. Lukers, we'll see you at worship at 10:30. Lena, Solveig, Amber, Sally, Bree, thank you all again so much. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
See you soon.
Keep it up.
Thank you.
素晴らしいだよ。素晴らしい。素晴らしいですね。
Okay. Bye all. Stop record.